Hi there, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's APMG webinar, the business value of effective change management. It's Mark Constable here. I'll be your host and moderator, and I'm joined by a regular guest presenter, Melanie Franklin. I'm sure we have a few attendees from previous webinars delivered by Melanie who'll be familiar with her background, but for the benefit of those that aren't, Melanie's an experienced practitioner, trainer and consultant in all things Agile and projects, program and change management. And alongside running her own Agile change management training and consultancy business, Melanie's the lead developer and chief examiner for our Agile Change Agent course and certification, co-chair for the UK chapter of the Change Management Institute, and has recently established the Continuous Change community on LinkedIn. So today's webinar is all about sharing the value of what effective change management brings to organisations, as despite recognition for change management as a profession continuing to grow, it's still undervalued in many organisations. Before I hand over to Melanie, bear with me a few more moments while I cover a few logistics for the session. So the first point to note is we are recording the webinar, and everyone that's registered will receive a follow-up email from me soon after we've finished with a link to the recording and slides. Secondly, you can submit questions at any time throughout the presentation, and we'll try and address as many of those as we can towards the end. Something that's not on the screen there is a poll, so do look out for that. I think we'll launch that soon after Melanie gets going. So great if you could complete that for us. So it'll help set the scene a little. And last but not least, your feedback is very welcome, as that helps us to plan and deliver webinars better in the future. Okay, that's logistics. So and the scene set. So welcome, Melanie, and over to you.
Thanks very much. So I'm going to frame the problem, why it's important that we establish the business value of change management. I'm going to be looking at our audience. I'm going to be looking at the value that we can offer them. And I'm going to give you a matrix to work through. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples from that matrix that I use to curate the message and to really target my communications towards people that I would like to get on board more with change management. So it's going to be quite a practical webinar. It's not just me sort of talking at you. And I've got a couple of questions that I would really like you to contribute to. So we're going to start with the poll question, and then we're going to move to a slightly different format. So first of all, quick poll, just so I can get to know you a little bit, because there's so many of you. It just gives me an understanding of who my audience is, really.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. That's on screen for everybody now, so I can see the answers coming in. Okay, answers coming in pretty quickly. We're at over 80% now, and we're looking at 36% project managers, 47% change managers, and then 7% for both business analyst and line or operations manager, and 3% the final option, someone impacted by change.
Okay. All right, well, welcome to the group. That gives me a bit of an understanding of who we've got here. So that really helps me, so thank you. Right, let's have a little look then. What am I going to be talking about? Well, I think it's really important that we establish the value of change management. Why now more than ever is this important? I think the issue is that we've always had this kind of model in front of us, where there's been a small group of change management professionals, and I include myself amongst that group, who have established a framework or a roadmap or a life cycle model, have developed a toolkit around that. Maybe you've even developed templates. They might have commissioned some training courses around it. And what we've basically done in a way is sort of push that. So we've pushed that onto those who are impacted by change, who have to lead themselves and, in the case of line managers, lead their teams through a change initiative. I think what that has done is, in part, it's created a parent-child relationship, a sort of dependency, where the change specialist is sort of in charge of how change is done and is sort of trying to sort of push that onto those who've got to get involved in change. And I really strongly believe that this model has now broken down to a large extent. And the reason for that, I think, is that for many managers, the response to COVID has been they have had to lead a huge number of change initiatives for their organisation, for their staff. And I think one of the issues is that they've got all of those examples of, hey, we got on with change, we got this sorted, didn't need to follow any kind of roadmap, I didn't need a whole load of templates, we just got it done. And so this has created this sort of view that, well, anyway, we don't need change professionals anymore, we're okay as we are. I chaired a discussion on Friday morning with some great thinkers, and I thought it was very interesting that they recognised this was actually a risk to the change management profession. I think earlier in the pandemic, there were a lot of people talking about how this was a great opportunity to prove how great we were at change. But actually, from our professional standing, there's a view that, well, actually, we're not needed because people managed to do it. But the thought panel I led on Friday morning, I thought made a tremendous contribution to this world by talking about the fact that we maybe have to get across the message that, yes, there were tremendous successes at the start of COVID and how organisations have moved online, moved to virtual working, implemented so much more technology than they ever thought was possible, and have accelerated the transition to new systems, new platforms. But that there was something different about those changes, and that will not hold true for all aspects of organisational change going forward. And of course, the big differences are, first of all, the sense of urgency, which was undeniable and everybody felt it. And in fact, it wasn't just organisational urgency, but there was a general feeling societally, as we all, whichever country we're living in, we've all felt this sort of push to, oh gosh, we're all going to start working from home. Gosh, we've got to keep going somehow. And so there was the organisational pressure and the societal pressure, which was contributed by our governments all talking about, what was needed from society to protect the healthcare systems in every country. So there was this big push, and there was a lot of consistent messaging around that. And I think if we look at any sort of ordinary change that we might be involved in, that isn't necessarily the case, is it? I'm trying to implement at the moment a brand new sort of platform which basically aggregates systems together and will give us an organisational capability for using data much better. But actually, there's not that sense of urgency. There isn't that sort of common message. There's certainly no societal pressure to do it. So the thing is, we've had all of these successes, which we must in no way denigrate because they have been fantastic successes. But I think it is going to create a sort of view of, oh, don't push all this change management stuff onto me. I'm a great change manager. I've already proven it. So if that's the challenge, if that's the problem that we face, what on earth are we going to do about it? And I think, to be honest, we've been moving towards this a little bit over the last few years, which is that perhaps what we need to be doing in change management is we need not to push against a framework, a roadmap, a set of plans and templates and techniques, not in a way that says, hey, this is how you should do stuff, but rather to use those mechanisms as a way to transfer knowledge and skills. In other words, to build that capability in others. And I think what we're going to have to do is we've got to create a pull mechanism where those who are impacted by change at whatever level in the organisation genuinely want to know what we know. They want to learn from us because they think, do you know what? This could make my job easier. This could actually save me from making mistakes. This could be really useful. And I think that's where the break is, because I'm not sure that we're communicating well enough what the advantage is, what the help is, what value we have as change managers. And I think if I go back to now, there's nearly 50% of you on the call who are change managers. So if I go back to you might even think of this as the Dick Becker change formula, where he talks about, you've got to sort of say that it solves a problem, you've got to say that it has a lot of an attractive sort of future state and that it's practical. And I do think there's something in there around we can mitigate the risks of difficulties we have today, we can offer lots of beneficial, advantageous techniques and shortcuts, and it's really practical that we can get these skills across to you. It's not going to sort of take you away for months while you have to go on a massive training course and learn loads of specific terminology. I think if we can put across our value proposition in a winning way, that will stoke the fires of that sort of pull mechanism. And that really is what I wanted to talk about today, is that I think we have to get really good at what value change management is, why it actually helps an organization. And I think that's the message that we've got to get across. We've got to start talking in terms of this is an important skill set. And I think that will lead us on to other parts of this cultural change, which will be, well, how do we then embed that skill set into leadership competency models, leadership role descriptions? How do we make sure that we say that change management skills are a fundamental part of our talent management strategy, and that we hire against those skills as well? So I think we're on the cusp now in terms of professionalizing change management, as we really do need to make this push, which is frankly why I wanted to do this webinar. Some of the techniques I'm going to show you come from the Agile Change Agent course that I developed for APMG, and I think that also speaks to what's happening, which is, again, they asked me for a course that was incredibly practical, that came up with lots of activities and techniques for real world problems in managing change. And I think that is just symptomatic of how we have to get on with things, which is we have to offer real world solutions for managers who are incredibly busy and staff who are feeling overwhelmed, not imply that we are yet another problem that we're pushing out to them. We're yet more responsibility, we're yet more form filling that needs to be done. If in any way we come across as that, oh, let me try and avoid this because I'm already busy kind of view, then we won't get there. So I think we have to put across that we have value. And frankly, I thought the best place to turn to start this conversation would be you. So that's what I want to do, is I want you to tell me. Could be just a couple of words. You can write a whole sentence if you want. But what I'm interested in, if you can put it in the question function. So if you can write your question, don't ask me why the chat function wouldn't work. Don't ask me. Just say that if you can put it in your questions, then it will be great, because we'll be able to see this. So what I'm asking for is, can you sort of say, what makes you really proud to be in change management? What do you think is the best thing you do for people? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come out of presenter mode, and I'm going to capture what you're all saying. Now, I hope that I would be able to see some of the questions, but I'm not sure, Mark, that it's actually working very well. I can't see the text. I can only see one line. So maybe, Mark, could you read aloud for me, and I'll type up what people are saying. I saw the one comment before it flashed off the screen, which is, we remove uncertainty. But if you can find a few others for me, that would be great.
Yep, quite a few coming through now. So yeah, you got that one, taking people on a journey.
Yeah, what else you got?
I like this, a shift in thinking of what is possible.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, lovely. What else?
Help the business to remember to always think of the customer. Always important. Ensuring business voice is heard and impacts key decision making on change programs.
Okay.
Providing the tools for others to use in their role.
Lovely. Yep.
Reduced risk.
Yep.
Support staff on their personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to provide perspective that's non-bias.
Not biased. Okay. Yep. What else?
This is one I was expecting to see. Remove silos.
Yes, that's true. Let me just push that up there. Yeah. And anything else? Couple more?
Give you a couple more. Yeah. Safer way of working.
Okay.
And enabling people. And it's probably good to throw that. good throw this one in as well. Stay focused on the outcomes and benefits.
Well, that's great. Okay, so we're obviously a motivated group, aren't we? That we can see all the value. What I thought I'd do is, I don't disagree with any of these, obviously. Change management is not just my profession, I think it's my life. But I recognise that often these things can fall on stony ground. So I think my first job really is to sort of maybe put this in a little context. And so I'm going to show you my technique for how I sort of structure my messages, because I thought this might be kind of helpful. So what I do is I tend to create a value matrix, and what I have is all of those business values, all of those benefits that you've identified. I think about those along the top, and I'm going to show you this in a lot more detail in just a moment. And I do that against each of the customers. So I'm very sort of keen to make sure this is helpful. Now, a couple of things I want to say. So who are our customers? And I'm going to be using that phrase very deliberately, customers, because I'm offering a service and I want them to buy it from me. So they are customers of mine. I know money is unlikely to change hands, but actually I do want them to want what I'm offering them. I do want them to be the purchasers, the customers. And what do they want from me? Well, what value are they looking for? Now, here's something. I do think the power of words sometimes can really shift how we put things across. And what value are they looking for? Well, when I think about value, I try to reframe it as results. I remember a very famous marketing story when I was studying marketing, which was a story about drill bits. People don't want quarter-inch drill bits. They want a quarter-inch hole. Think about that for a moment. And really what you're thinking about is the fact that what we're selling is not the mechanism to achieve something. What we're selling them is the solution. Charles Revson, who established the Revlon beauty company, used to talk a lot. He used to use this example a lot when he talked about the fact that I understand our factories produce lipsticks, but all of our beauty staff in the drugstores, he was talking about the US, are selling hope, not lipsticks. And I thought that's very interesting. It's about that perception of what, in other words, Charles Revson, the reason he was so successful is he got to the heart of the matter, which is what is it that people, what problem are people trying to solve? What is it that they're hoping for from whatever it is that we're trying to give them? And as I said, it wasn't a lipstick. It was the fact that people would feel more hopeful, they would feel more beautiful, they would feel happier in their lives. It was all of those hopeful things. So I do think we need to think about the customer being somebody who has to buy something from us, want something from us, want our service. And we need to be thinking about that in terms of how we put that across to people. So those are the two things that are in my mind when I'm curating my messages. And I spend my life arguing that change management is a very valuable professional discipline. So you're getting sort of 40 minutes of what I do with my life. You're just seeing under the hood of how I spend my days in boardrooms around the world, trying to get in early when there's a major millions of dollar transformation and say, do you know what? Change management is something you guys need, really need. And I can't just push the solution onto them. I do have to talk about what value they'll get from it. So let's have a look at who is our audience. As I said, this comes from the Agile Change Agent course, and that's based on the Agile Change Management book. And this community map is very simple, but it gets you thinking. Because I do think there's something in here about our audience. I think our customer base, again, using that word customer, our customer base is much wider than we think it is. And I think that they have a much broader range of interests in change management than we give them credit for, which we're going to look at in a moment. So first of all, I tend to think about, well, if we're right in the middle there, we are going to be implementing or adopting a new way of working. I think, first of all, those doing the work are those who are impacted. And it's the project team who are creating the tangible elements. I know a third of you are in project management, and you are an essential part of the ecosystem of change and the realization of benefits. Because what you do is you create for us the tangible elements that we then use to trigger, oh, Let's work differently. So you are a part of this alongside colleagues, staff members, line managers, middle managers, whatever you want to call them, who have to basically they are doing the work of making sure that this initiative comes to pass. Now, an awful lot of those line managers, operational managers, middle managers and staff are down the bottom as well, because they are the ones that have to change their ways of working. I always think that the most important thing I keep in mind when I look at my customers on this map is the word recipients. They are the recipients of whatever is changing. They are receiving that change. How can I make that as easy as possible for them? How can I make it as easy as possible for them to consume, if you like, what we're changing and to alter their ways of working? I also remember that on the right-hand side that, you know, my world isn't just internal stakeholders. I might very well have people who are checking how's it going and making sure it's going well from like a sponsor, for example, or an internal audit function, or even finance. How much are we spending on this? What difference is it going to make? But I've also got sometimes external regulatory bodies as well about, are we doing things in the right way? And then when it comes to actually changing how we do something, there are people who supply us with information, they supply us with inputs, all sorts of different inputs. And maybe what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing how they format what they give us, when they give it to us, you know, how it's packaged, whatever. And so I've got quite a wide-ranging audience, and I want to be thinking about that group when I'm trying to sort of curate my messages about how valuable is change management. So a really simple technique. I mean, this was not a difficult matrix to get your heads around, but it does start to think, and I know I'm going to give you these slides after this. Mark's going to take them off me. And I know that if you use this community map to actually think about it, you'll think of lots more. You'll really dig into this. The other thing I want to think about is this value proposition. And I start with, as I said, I often have to start at the very senior level and trying to get people to think that change management is a good thing. And so I have to recognise that in the boardroom, we tend to talk about two things: revenue increases and cost decreases. Or if I'm in the public sector, and again, it doesn't matter which country I'm working in, public sector, NGOs, I will find that it's usually cost decrease remains the same wherever you are, but productivity increase, not revenue increase, is the thing they're interested in. Because if we're not seen to be, we're not a commercial operation making money from our stakeholders, then it would be productivity that we want to see improving. But either one of those, these two are the end point, really, of any benefits identification. Underpinning that is often customer satisfaction, because of course that tends to lead to revenue increases, decrease in costs because we don't have to go and acquire more customers. Staff engagement. Well, staff engagement leads to greater productivity and revenue increases because we've still got the same staff, but they are able to do even more and even more passionate about their jobs. And of course, it decreases the cost of us having to go and hire more staff. And then, of course, regulatory compliance, which saves you money because you don't get fined and enables you to keep going, which enables you to continue to earn revenue. But then there's something else. Now, I've been reading, I don't know how many textbooks I've read this year because I've been doing an awful lot of work on course development and building a whole new neuroscience in change management course for a big client of mine. But I came across this a few months ago and I've been using it ever since, and it's really worked, which is that underneath tier 2 benefits are lots of tier 3 benefits. Organizationally, I need to make things happen, like I need to simplify processes, make them easier, faster to do, and that's fine. But on the right-hand side, what I thought was really interesting is that there are benefits underneath this, where particularly how people feel, social and emotional benefits. And I really wanted to talk about this because I think that this gives us a tremendous insight into connecting that we do something valuable for people, because actually we all know there's this "what's in it for me" comment. And if I push the organizational benefits, revenue increased, cost decrease, or I talk about greater customer satisfaction, greater staff engagement, I'm not sure that, you know, taken in isolation, that would necessarily motivate me to get up an hour earlier in the morning and put extra effort into doing something. Actually, I'm a human being, and so actually I'm driven by my social and emotional needs. Now, what I mean by this is, so social jobs, okay? There are certain jobs that I want to achieve, and these are tacit. I don't go around talking about these things, none of us do. But actually, they're incredibly important drivers. They are needs that must be met. And if we can connect what change management can do for somebody to these social and emotional jobs, I guarantee you will have a far more interested audience who will think that what you're talking about is far more relevant than if I just say, oh, it will help decrease the cost base, or it will reduce the risk that we will fail to bring on the return on investment that we promised in the business case. Now, I know you know that change management absolutely does do that, that as we help people through the journey of transition from the old to the new ways of working, if we are there holding their hand every step of the way, they're less likely to falter, they're more likely to keep going and change how they work, which will lead to those organisational benefits. They will be able to do more for less. They'll be able to increase their productivity, generate more revenue. It will cost the organisation less. I know that's in there, and that's a very important part of what we do. But if I want to make a connection, and if I want people to value what we do, maybe I ought to talk at a deeper level into the heart of how we as human beings actually behave. So social jobs, for example, the personal brand is the heading I've given it, but I'm going to give you some examples. Is that one of the things I want to look more credible. It might be that I need to look more credible in front of my customers or clients, or perhaps my existing team, or people within an organisation I haven't worked with before. I need to establish credibility, but it's a need of mine. Now, if I can start to talk about how knowing about change management and knowing all the techniques of change management will increase that credibility, then suddenly I look like I'm selling something very interesting. Commanding respect. I mean, obviously, I want to be respected. That I want to be more convincing. I want to sort of demonstrate that I'm well connected, or I want to make sure that people include me in important conversations or seek me out for my views. You know, any line manager is going to want to have that kind of respect, be sought out for their views, be included early on in important conversations. So anything that helps them command that respect will be welcomed. People like to know that there's a clear direction. They like to know what steps are ahead of them. They like to know that they're up to date with their knowledge. They want to sort of generate more time for sort of thinking and planning. And people want to enjoy their job. So they want a simplified work. They want to reduce the risk of doing the wrong stuff. They want to increase their energy levels. They want to reduce their stress. So there's a lot of social jobs about how we interact with the world. And then even deeper than that is the emotions that we feel. I want to feel excited. I want to have interest in my job. I want to feel excited. I want to feel stimulated. I was on a call with somebody earlier this week who talked about the fact that he was in his early 60s and he had sort of plans to maybe carry on for the next 5 years. But at that point in his life, what was most important to him was that he was doing an interesting job, intellectually stimulating job. He didn't need to go for promotions. He didn't need to go for lots of sort of climbing the greasy pole because, you know, he was looking at, you know, real retirement in the next few years, but he still wanted to do something useful and something he felt valuable. So, you know, it's a very emotional thing that we want to feel excited and interested in what we're doing. We want to feel that confidence, maybe not just confidence about being able to do the current job, but maybe confidence that we're making progress in our careers or that we're positioning ourselves well for future job opportunities. A very important emotion is that we need to feel that what we're doing and how we do it really does accord with our values. I need to know that I'm doing something worthwhile, and I want reassurance that I'm doing it the right way. And then the social inclusion, fairly obviously, I want to feel that people like me, that they value me, that I'm part of a group. So these might sound like abstract concepts, but if you think about it, you and I know that this is what drives all of us. And what I'm suggesting is that we connect the world of change management back to this. So when I complete my matrix, here's an example. Obviously, I would tailor this the particular situation I would be in. I don't tend to share my matrix with anybody because it's about how I it's almost like pieces on the chessboard. It's actually how I plot how I'm going to get key messages across. I never lose sight of the fact that those messages, the first column is organizational benefits. So I need to talk about cost reductions, revenue increases, productivity increases, staff engagement, customer satisfaction. I've got one client who, honestly, the only thing he ever talks about is net promoter score, whether or not customers are likely to recommend his organization to other customers. The thing he's most obsessed with. And obviously for him, what I tend to talk about is that organizational benefit. But I also make sure that I'm connecting what I'm doing to those social and emotional jobs that I just talked about. And I thought what I'd take the opportunity to do before turning back to you guys is to give you a couple of examples of how I do this. Now, what I've decided to do is I've just picked out couple of parts of the community map that I am particularly worried about, which is line managers, building a really effective relationship with those who are, leading teams and have quite a lot of objectives on their shoulders. And then I'm also really interested in getting change management to be seen as something useful and relevant to everybody who is on the staff and has to change their ways of working. If I go back to this idea of a pull mechanism, I do want, and hello to that third of you that is project managers, I do want to be talking to you as a community, the project and program management community. I absolutely want to be talking to you, all of those of you who are working in a PMO, all of those of you who are on business analysis roles. I want to be talking to you about the value of change management. I want to be getting in with you to think about how, bringing us on early, all the advantages that this can actually have for an organization, how it helps you do your job. So if I look at your social and emotional jobs, I want to talk about how it increases your chances of project success, how it increases your chances of realizing benefits, how it decreases the number of angry and upset stakeholders, how it increases the level of participation in your project, and that people are actually turning up for meetings, that they're taking part in testing. Oh, believe me, I do want to have this conversation with you, and I will use this matrix to plot some of the key things I want to talk to you about. But for these examples, I wanted to pull out specifically line managers and staff, because I think if we are to look at what I said was broken at the start of this webinar, which is this feeling that we don't need official change management, we did just fine. During March and April, when real COVID crisis hit us, we knew what we were doing. We made loads of change. We don't need anything official. We'll be fine on our own. If I'm right about that link between us and those impacted by change really being broken, then they become my top priority in terms of who I'm communicating with. So I thought I'd have a look at a couple of examples. So with my line manager, what's going on here then? I think the thing that I want to say here is that a line manager, right, already overwhelmed. I mean, I'm on calls with guys who are feeling that, there's a huge amount of organizational pressure at the moment, two pressures: keeping costs down and really keeping the team engaged, because actually the team, possibly because of furlough, possibly because of redundancies, because a number of organizations I know have unfortunately implemented redundancy programs this summer. So for either of those reasons, they've got to keep their team engaged. They've got to keep the productivity level really high. They need energetic and really motivated team members, because there is so much on their shoulders. So there's a tremendous pressure for line managers who frankly are struggling by the fact that, you know, they're working from home, a situation that is likely to continue long after, you know, we started the vaccine program. I talked to somebody this morning who we were talking about the fact that possibly by Easter we should know a little bit of where we're getting to in terms of the vaccine programs that are going to be rolling out across, let's say, Europe, across North America, etc. So some of our developed countries. But also we recognise that there's a very good chance that the COVID will have lasted in total a good 18 months to 2 years, because, you know, I can't see us sort of changing some of our situation until maybe September, October of next year, which sounds an awful thing to say, but I think getting people back into offices and working together, and it's not going to look the same as it looked before, because it's not going to be every single day and every single team member. Many organisations, I think, are now starting to recognise that. So we've got overwhelmed line managers. They are having to implement a huge amount of change that is not of their making. So, for example, there's been an awful lot of IT change ramped up, needing to sort of get things done. Some regulators have stepped in. There have been a lot of organisational restructures, as I said, because of furlough and redundancies. So they are really under pressure. So if I'm going to make a convincing case, you know what, change management can help you. Well, you know, I can talk about the organisational benefits, that if I can sort of upskill you in change management, you'll be much better at explaining how change is happening, how it will be achieved. So with your own customers, whether that you know, that's downstream from you, whether they're internal or external customers, you can explain how your team are going to make change happen, what you think the impacts are going to be for your customers, and help them adjust to those new ways of working. So I can talk about it in organizational benefits terms, but I can also talk about it in terms of sort of personal brand, if you like, in that it will, you know, knowing about change management, knowing all the tips and techniques that we all know, will make you more credible and more knowledgeable in front of those that you want to impress. And that means that you'll certainly command more respect, because you'll look like you're well organized, you'll look convincing, and that people will seek out your views because it looks like you know stuff that maybe they don't know, which is a very sort of big social benefit. Emotionally, it's going to help you because it's going to reassure you that you're doing the right things in the right way. So that will accord with your values, because that's actually a lot of what people want to achieve. And from a social inclusion point of view, you know, you want to feel valued and you want to feel liked. And if you make sense and you're talking people through something in a simple step-by-step way, they're going to think, that's a reliable person, we like that person. So there's a very emotional piece about being liked in there. So I think I can make a good case for that line manager to go, do you know what, this is actually quite useful, rather than it being a disruption and yet another obligation on my shoulders. Maybe Mel's got something here that can actually help me, and that's really what I want to get to. And if I talk then, same sort of thing, I don't think any staff members that far removed, but let's have a talk. I think that anybody is feeling the high volume of change and feeling that, you know, how they work, the systems they're using, who they work with, when and where they work, the social implications of COVID, including isolation from friends and family, bigger questions about long-term plans. You know, people they're showing up for work every day, but there's a big conversation going on in many families about, you know, are you going to stay in that job? Are we going to move? Are we going to move to the country? Or are we going to move to the city? If you can work from home a few days a week, that opens up lots of new possibilities for us as a family. You know, and there's an awful lot of these things going on. So the people are at work, but there's also this much wider context going on. And of course, in work, they have to keep changing their ways of working. And the crucial thing, I think, if we want to be empathetic with staff members, is that they're doing it alone. There's limited social support from colleagues because of all the remote working. There's lots of articles being written now about how, you know, people are not being able to pass on little bits of tips and ideas of how they're coping, because it feels a bit too informal to raise in a Zoom meeting. The sort of stuff that you might have passed on if you were queuing for a cup of tea in the canteen, or walking down the corridor towards a meeting, for example. All of that's gone missing because that's not how we're working anymore. Some of us are desperately trying to sort of retrofit that into our world with sort of, informal gin and tonics, informal breakfast meetings, coffee breaks and things with people. But, across the board, a lot of that's gone out the window. So it's definitely harder. Now, we can talk about organizational benefits again, customer satisfaction, clearly explaining to customers what's going to be changing, how it impacts them, all of that. But I think, again, can we get into the social jobs that people want to achieve? Maybe clear direction. If it helps, change management helps somebody understand what steps they're going to be taking when they're confronted with change, which gives them a real feel of achieving clear direction. They feel they're being more convincing when they're explaining something. That creates more of a command of respect. On the emotional side, it does help people achieve this sort of feeling of joy when they solve problems. They know what they're doing, and all of that helps them sort of create that greater interest and motivation for their job. And it increases the feeling of being sort of a reliable person, of being liked, which again goes to social inclusion. So you can use basically, and I will send out these sort of this list of social jobs and emotional jobs, so you can just see all these factors. I will send this out with the slide, so it sort of gives you an idea of, maybe I could use that to sort of get under the skin of the people that I want to be talking to. So that was my matrix. As I said, I talk about the people impacted as my customers. I talk about the benefits, the value, the solutions I'm offering, in other words, and I particularly want to target my messages to address the tacit, unexpressed need for that social and emotional sort of requirement. So that effectively is what I wanted to share on this webinar. Now, what I want to ask you is, has any of this made a bit of a difference? What do you think you should do next? Because if we agree that perhaps we're at a point where we maybe need to start talking more about the value of change management, I really, again, I'm going to do the same thing I did before, get you to put it in the questions box. But have I inspired you? Have I excited you? Have I met your social and emotional needs on this webinar? And have you got any idea, one little thing that you might be able to do after this webinar to go, do you know what? That's something I could start doing. So this is a real test, isn't it? Because it will find out whether or not anything that I was saying was remotely interesting or remotely useful. So I'll soon find out. So I'm going to move off presenter mode and put, actually, I've created a little slide to do things. So Mark, I'm going to hand over to you again to see if anything's coming up.
Yep, I'm ready. Well, one person at least has said you've excited me, so it seems like you're on the right track.
Excellent. I'm going to capture that. That's good. Has anybody got anything they want to be doing next?
Yeah, lots of things coming through now. So build a small virtual team of interest in change management to begin to sell benefits.
To sell benefits. Ooh, yeah, like that. What else?
See senior leaders as people first and connect to them, then talk business.
Ah, I love that. Yes, I think that's right. And connect with them. Yeah, if you can't see somebody as a human being, you're not going to connect with them, are you? I do think that we are becoming, there's a greater emphasis on humanity since the COVID crisis, which I am really enjoying, that we talk to people as if they are genuinely human beings, and just asking them, I was with a client yesterday and she asked me, how are you? And I went, honestly, a bit wobbly. We've just gone into another massive lockdown here in Spain, and that does have an impact if I'm looking after my elderly father and his carers cannot come to the house. So if you honestly ask me, yeah, I'm a bit wobbly. And she treated me not as a supplier in that moment. She treated me like a human being, which I really appreciated. So yeah, totally get that. Right, what else have we got?
So experiment with the value matrix.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I mean, this is my interpretation of the world. I'm going to be sharing it with you via the slides that Mark's sending out, and I'll send out the social and emotional jobs. But obviously, it's up for you to have a play with it and get the most value out of it. See what you can do with it. What else we got?
Take time to assess the social stuff.
Yeah.
Focusing more on the value of what we do.
Don't ever forget, you know, it's not 1/4-inch drill bits, it's 1/4-inch holes. That to me really hits home. I know I should probably be more interested in Charles Rev's an example from Revlon, but actually I do think it is the hole, not the drill bit. Yep.
Right. Build a detailed change management value proposition for each broader stakeholder group.
Change management value proposition for each stakeholder group. If you shared that as an article on LinkedIn, I think you get 1,000 hits. Yep. What else you got?
Create workshops to deliver the benefits of change. Be more empathetic.
Oh, yes. Yes, lovely. As I said, that person who treated me like a human being yesterday, I probably will go the extra mile. Not that I wouldn't go the extra mile for people, but my God, will I go the extra mile for her? Because she, you know, it really, you remember those things. You remember it when people are empathetic. When they're walking in your shoes and they're walking alongside you, you always remember it. What else we got?
There's quite a lot. I'm just struggling to keep up, actually. Yes, I think the social emotional side is really important and often overlooked.
I'm going to capture that because it's a reminder of why we're interested in what we've just been doing. Yep.
Yeah, I think this one's quite similar to one that's gone before, but talking about business benefits and outcomes in the context of stakeholders' point of view. Somebody else planning
And if
to
you
use the
can't
value
identify your stakeholders, you can't start to think about their point of view, can you? So that's where that community map becomes really useful. Yeah.
Yeah, others on the social and emotional stuff. So I will ensure I research more into the social and emotional aspect of change. So there's quite a few on that social.
So that's
emotional.
obviously hit home. I tell you what, I've been reading, and I can't tell you how many textbooks I've read on this subject. I'm studying. I've signed up for a couple of programs in one in a med school in the States on neuroscience, and probably I'm under tremendous pressure to do all of my homework all of the time. But it's been really interesting over the summer seeing this point about social and emotional stuff. I'm not going to bore you with all the academic references, but bear in mind that what I'm putting out for you is being heavily researched, and it's really I found it really thought-provoking, and it's definitely improving the way I'm putting my comments across. So we'll research more into social and emotional aspects of change. I'll probably leave it there because we're starting to get close to the end, but I'm also trying to be empathetic in that it's 10:02, and if you sort of sign up for an hour to do something, you don't want people to take the full hour, because that does not allow anybody to have a bathroom break, or in fact to go, do you know what, I've just heard some interesting things, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to decompress before we go forward. So thank you for that. I'm now going to turn it over. I know you've obviously all had your say, but I wanted to also give you the opportunity to pose any questions, anything else you wanted me to talk about, I'm happy to do. So I'm happily stay for the full hour, but I wanted to make sure that if you need to go, that you've got something useful from me. So what would you like to ask me?
Okay, babe. Let's go for this one first. So this one goes back towards the start of the presentation, and Natalia agrees with the sense of urgency and shared purpose. So when it's come to things like protect the NHS saves lives, that was key. But how do we, as change managers, create strong shared purpose in less critical situations?
You see, the thing is, I think this is where we have to talk, we have to ask. I've always said with change management, it's ask, don't tell. And I think that if we keep asking people, why is this important to you? How will this help you? What difference will this make? And get those conversations going, and do this as a sort of cross-functional groups, so that, I mean, I find it really interesting. I had in a discussion group the other day, I had finance, I had risk, I had 2 operational managers, and who else was it? I think that's somebody from audit. But the thing that was interesting is that I got them each talking, and they were going, oh, that affects you as well, does it? And oh no, that's not the same in our area. So they could see the commonality and the differences, but how this one change was going to affect them all slightly differently. But I got them talking about why this change is important to them. So it wasn't, I could never have worked out all of the messaging. I couldn't guess what was going to give them that sense of urgency. By talking to them about how it was going to impact them, talking about why that impact was important to them or their customers, got them realizing that there was a sense of urgency, and that this wasn't actually a change that was just coming down from on high just to annoy them, and that actually it could actually be quite important. And that came from talking. Now, somebody I work with regularly and really respect, she was saying the other day that she's doing exactly this because she's doing a reorganization, a restructuring for an organization. She said, you know what? She says it's taking longer, but it's because what we're doing is we are carefully facilitating conversations, as I've just described, but we're having to do it via Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Hangouts, when normally we probably would have done it in, just much more in the canteen, down the corridor, coming in early and having a, having a breakfast with somebody. And now we're having to do it on screen. And I think she said it's taking longer, but she said we're still having those conversations, it's just harder. So I thought I'd pass on that that wisdom from her, because she's somebody I really respect. And if she's saying it's taking longer, I found that a really useful benchmarking, because I felt the same way. I'm still having the ask, don't tell moments, but it is taking longer to sort of curate it all and get people turning up to those sessions. Thank you, Natalia. What else have we got?
Thanks, Mel. This is a good one. Do you have any idea on why it took a pandemic to accelerate changes that were clearly needed and achievable?
I think it's just, at the end of the day, I used to be global head of crisis management for a couple of the big investment banks around the world. And so I had maybe an insight into this sense of urgency. I've led crises before. And there is nothing like a genuine crisis to get people completely mobilized and completely focused on the job in hand. Is that there is an element of drama. There is an element of adrenaline, of cortisol flowing through the bloodstream, that really gets people very energetic, putting a lot of effort in. And if I want to put it in change management terms for a moment, good old Professor Edgar Schein talking about survival anxiety. I think that is what it was. Is that feeling of, if I don't do this, my job won't survive, my company won't survive, my family won't survive this, not having, I won't be able to support them. There was an awful lot of survival anxiety. The danger is if we think, well, that was good, let's have more of that. If we manufacture it, that's a very big danger. But I think you can always draw people to a realization that actually this change could really help them. We can always draw people towards that, but what happens is that people have to make their own conclusion. But we were definitely helped with the fact that various governments around the world would do daily press briefings or national addresses. President Macron always looked incredibly serious, and I think that that did support the message underneath, which won't genuinely happen. But so I don't think we'll see it. Every crisis I've led has had that amazing sense of urgency, which is never replicated on other organisational changes. But I think we can now appreciate that maybe getting everybody onto a common messaging is pretty important, and maybe we'll spend a bit more time on that.
Great, thanks, Mel. We'll go to Barbara's question next. Barbara works in an industry with a high level of industry and regulatory rules. Is it possible to link social and emotional benefits back to regulatory compliance to sell change management?
Oh, I think I'm going to depress Barbara now by saying I used to be head of regulatory liaison. I've had some very interesting jobs in my life, 102 financial regulators around the world I had to satisfy on any given day. And an awful lot of the time they ask me for stuff that, frankly, they want us to do something in a different way that we were kind of doing. So there was nothing wrong with the way we were doing it, except the regulator didn't like it. And having to put that change in, I think sometimes what I've often had to do is expand the scope of the change. So maybe they're asking for something, maybe they want me to sort of put new columns in a spreadsheet or something. If I'm really clever, what I'll do is I'll look slightly wider and think, do you know, is there a way that we could automate this particular piece? Or is there a way that we could start asking for this data in an easier way? Maybe we could get our customers to start inputting this data for us, as opposed to us scrabbling around looking for it. So I've always tried to create greater value, and therefore the emotional and social value of the change, actually by changing the scope a little bit, widening the scope a little bit, because I'm not always convinced, having, as I said, been head of regulatory liaison, that my regulators were asking anything that would make that I could genuinely argue helped with personal credibility or simplification of work or whatever. But if I widen the scope a little bit, maybe I could.
Great, thanks, Mel. I think we've got time for one or two more. So we'll go to Karen's next. What do you see as the key challenges and opportunities of doing change management in a virtual and remote world and transitioning to a post-COVID workplace?
The thing that I'm most concerned about in a virtual world is that people have got relationships, and they've been trading on relationships that they created physically, face-to-face, up until March. And what I'm most worried about is how we are now getting into a position where we're working with people that we've never met, and that I think we have to put a lot more time and effort into getting to know people, and maybe being willing to have those more empathetic and vulnerable conversations to really build relationships at the start, and therefore form some close ties. So I think for me, it's about the fact that what's going to be happening now, and I think this is a long-term legacy, because I don't think we'll always be coming into the office, is how do I form those productive relationships with people that really I don't have that conversation with.
Right, thanks, Mel. And a good one to finish up on from Karen again. How have you joined? How have you tackled joining up all the roles in a big siloed organisation who all think they're doing change and adding value?
I think what I tend to do is I certainly don't in any way criticize how they do things. If I'm bringing people together, I get them to help me co-create, if you like, the way in which we're going to do this particular change. So whatever it is, I tend to bring them together situationally, and sort of celebrate the fact that they've all got lots of experiences in change. And this is even more true post the changes we made rapidly in March and April. So I celebrate that they are experienced change managers, even if they formally don't know anything at all about change. And I use my knowledge to sort of tease out and help them tease out the way in which they want to manage a particular change with me, so that we become partners, not a sort of supplier and customer, if I can do that.
Great stuff. Thanks, Mel. And that takes us very close to the hour, so we better start wrapping up there. No power cut. That was a success.
No, I'm very pleased that there wasn't power cuts. I did warn Mark that we've had quite a few here. I will say this, I will be putting out more content around this. So if you want to link in with me, and I keep adding to this. I'm writing all the time, because I'm learning so many lessons myself. I keep writing up the lessons learned. So do feel free to link in with me, and I will share more as we go.
Perfect, thanks, Mel. We'll leave this further info slide up as well, so you've got some links there to the Agile Change Agent course and the Change Management course.
Come and join me on the course. People love it, and I love training it because it's so practical. I like solving problems. I like using techniques to solve problems. So I'm kind of really proud of this course, because I think it really does that.
Great stuff. So yeah, that just leaves the wrap up. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Do hope you found it useful and informative, and many thanks as ever to you, Melanie, for your insights and expertise today. I'll remind of what I said at the start as well, just in case anyone joined a few minutes late. We have recorded the session, and if you look out on your emails over the next couple of hours, I'll be sending a follow-up, and that will contain a link to the recording and slides, and I will obviously throw in a few bits of other information in there for you too. So that's it. Thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend ahead. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.